myself. This is Eric Samuels, Continuum of Care Director at Texas Homeless Network, the Continuum of Care lead agency for the Texas Balance of State. And so today we will be talking about a few of the documents we reviewed with COC project applicants this morning. And then we'll be hearing from some of our local homeless coalition leads. And I'm sorry, let me get that agenda up for you. I was actually showing you the agenda from our meeting this morning earlier. So here's our agenda for today. So like I said, we'll start with introductions, and then we're actually going to spend a little bit of time hearing from Jennifer Paulson, who is our Development and Training Director here at THN, about the Case Management Institute that's coming up here in Austin. And like I said before, we will talk about the application documents that I met with some folks about this morning. We actually will talk about items A and B, and we'll take each one of those items separate. And if we have enough board members here, we will vote on approving those or not after the presentation. I'll have a little bit to say about the project evaluation process, but we will be talking about that more next month as well. And then I'm going to hand it off to folks to talk about their local homeless coalitions. We need to start defining or setting the parameters for what a homeless coalition is in the Texas Balance of State, so we can add that to our governance. So we're going to hear some different examples from communities around the state. Some folks will be able to present with their mics. Others will have to type in their responses, and I'll read them off. And then I have a few polls that I want to put out about defining what a homeless coalition is, and we'll go through those really quickly. And then we'll just finish it up talking about next steps. I'll discuss some of the things that we'll be talking about in May, and then a little bit about this fiscal year's COC NOFA, and then we'll close out the meeting. Okay, let me go ahead and start with, before we get to introductions, I want to start with attendance for our voting board members, or what has been called our governance committee. So I see Christina Folsom is here. Is Carol Gresham here? If you're here, can you type in? I'm not seeing your name. Okay. How about, well, Kelly Stallings I know is not here. Sandra Moore? Can you type in and say that you're here if you are? Okay, I see you're here. And Tracy Sepulvedo, I see that you're here. And then me. Okay, so what we're taking attendance for was the governance committee there to make sure we had enough votes, enough people to take a vote, and we do. We have 4 of the 7, so we will be able to hold votes on the COC RFP and the new project application form. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through the list of attendees. And I'm going to start with the folks that are joining us by in alphabetical order by first name. And just to save time, I'm going to go through the list, and I'm going to say who you are, where you're from, and what agency you're with to the best of my memory's ability. So starting off, we have Alice Bracken. She's with the Texarkana Homeless Coalition, and she works at the Friendship Center. Next is Bahia Nightingale, and Bahia is with the City of Temple and works on many grant programs that would help people experiencing homelessness. Beth Rawlingson is in Bastrop, and she is the Executive Director of Advocacy Outreach. Bill Reagan is joining us from Harlingen. He is the Executive Director of Loaves and Fishes there. Christina Folsom is joining us from Tyler. She is the leader of the East Texas Human Needs Network. Danny Coca is joining us from Hidalgo County. He works for community development there, and he is one of the lead people there with Irma Garza managing their ESG program. Deborah Huffman is joining us from community development in Orange, I believe, Orange, Texas. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Deborah, and you can type in that response. Everyone, please feel free to use the GoToMeeting widget to type in your questions, and you can make comments there too. I'll get them both there. Next we have Diana Thornton, and she's with the Crisis Center, and I'm sorry, I don't know which Crisis Center you're talking about, so you'll have to type that in. Enid Garcia is joining us from Montgomery County Emergency Assistance in Conroe. Jenny Stafford is joining us from Victoria. She is the Executive Director of Mid-Coast Family Services. Greg Grubb is joining us from Tyler. He is the Executive Director of PATH. Hannah Adams joining us from Brown County. She leads the Brown County Home Solutions Coalition. Next we have Hermelinda Garcia, who's joining us from the City of Brownsville, I believe. No, Catholic Diocese of Brownsville. I'll get that right one of these months, Ms. Garcia. Irma Garza, like I mentioned before, she's joining us from Hidalgo County. She works with Danny Coca. Jean East is joining us from Lufkin. She's with the domestic violence shelter there. Jesse Elizondo is joining us from Corpus Christi. He is with the Salvation Army there. Melinda Conway Vaughn, Director of Wesley Community Center in Corpus Christi, is also joining us. Mark Bethune with Concho Valley Community Action Agency in San Angelo is joining us. Melody Alexander from Henderson County, Athens, advocate extraordinaire, is joining us. Monica Pena Rasmussen from La Posada is joining us, and that is in Brownsville, I believe. She'll correct me, I'm sure, if that's not right. Pam Mossberger from Faith Mission in Washington County, Brenham, is joining us. P.K. Moore from some other place in Beaumont. That's the name of the agency, and they're in Beaumont. She's joining us. Oh, we've had more and more people join us here. Sandra Moore from Matagorda County Crisis Center is joining us from Bay City. Sandra Lerma, and I'm sorry I don't remember where you're from, Miss Lerma, but thank you for joining us. Shannon Smith from Domestic Violence Prevention in Texarkana is joining us, and Tracy Sepulvedo from Community Health Corps in Longview is with us, and he's also one of the leaders of the Northeast Texas Homeless Consortium. Tracy Farazan from Goodwill in Corpus Christi is joining us, and Victor Maldonado, Ozanam Center in Brownsville, is on with us. Wendy Leonard from Project Doors in Longview is on as well. And then finally, Yvonne Menendez is joining us from the Start Center in San Benito. On staff joining us, we have Craig Fierro, who will be helping us out with the notes and management of this webinar. And like I said before, Jennifer Paulson is with us. So thank you all for taking the time to meet with us, and review some of what we've worked on in the past month. So I'm going to go ahead and take it to the next item, which is COC participation. And I've asked if Jennifer can give us some information about the Case Management Institute, which is something THN has held the past few years. She'll correct me on that if that's not right, but it is something that is coming up, and it's a very beneficial institute. I think it would be beneficial to case managers throughout the balance of state to attend, and I'm going to let her go ahead and talk about that. So Jennifer, let me unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, and I'm going to pull up.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. Okay. So the Case Management Institute, this is actually our second year, but it is an extension of what we used to do more often, which was our case management for Continuum of Care projects. So this is a 2-day event. There is the event website, and I will also send this out. Some of you may have received it, some of you may not have if you're new to the list. It's also on our website. You can get to it from there under education, and then there's a drop down to case management. You click on that, and then there's a link to this event website. So you can see some of the things that we'll be covering. It is really good for new case managers, and that's kind of what it's geared for. But there are some other things that maybe case managers haven't been working on, but they're not new, and that might be like housing programs, calculating occupancy charges, HQS inspections. So that's on the second day, which will be very informative. We've tried to keep it at a low cost as possible while still covering our expenses. If you send at least 5 people or 5 people from your agency, it's $150. Otherwise, it's $175, and that's for 2 days with 2 lunches and then breakfast in the morning. So we hope that you can send some people. If you have any questions, you can email me, jennifer@thn.org. And again, like I said, I'll get the list from Eric and then send it out again to make sure that you received it. Thanks. I think that was it. And if you have any questions, just shoot them to me at my email.
That was perfect. And her email is really easy. It's jennifer@thn.org. So, and I also sent the link to this page to everyone who is on the webinar now through the chat function. Is there anyone who would like to say something about the Case Management Institute? Someone who may have participated in the past? If you would, I can unmute you. You don't have to, but I do know that a lot of folks last year reported to me, at least, that they found it to be very useful, and they took a lot of what they learned back to their agencies and their communities and were able to employ it really easily into what they do. Okay. I don't see any takers. And I'm sorry y'all had to mute everyone because it was, we're getting a lot of feedback. So please type in or use the raise hand function if you want to if you want to speak up. Okay, let me go back to the agenda here. Okay, so earlier today at 10 a.m. I met with a group of folks that are interested in the COC application documentation that we're putting together for the fiscal year 2015 grant. We focused on the COC project application RFP and the COC application for new housing projects. Like I said earlier in this meeting, we didn't focus too much, or we didn't talk too much about the COC renewal project evaluation process. We'll take that up, the work on that up next month, and in May, hopefully have something for the board to vote on. But what we did is we went through the RFP that I had sent out to everyone prior to the meeting, and I pointed out things that had changed from last year and some of the changes that we just saw that needed to be made in the document, such as grammar errors, things like that. I pointed all of those out during that meeting, and after that meeting I made the corrections to those items and highlighted some of the topics that we spent the most time discussing during the meeting earlier, and that's what I want to present to you and explain what we voted on as a group and what the result of that is. So there were probably 4 major topics, and those were at the meeting. If you want to jump in anytime, please do, and provide your comment, or if you have a question you didn't ask before, please do that. Or if anyone who's new to this has a question, please type it in or use the raise hand function. So there are about 4 things that I think really stand out as either differences from last year or things that were very important last year and remain very important for this year's competition. And just as a point of reference, this RFP is focused on the fiscal year 2015 HUD Continuum of Care application, just that application process. It does not apply to any of the other grant sources. So the first thing that we pointed out was that this year was a little different than, this year will be a little different than last year, in that the only way to create a new project with reallocated funds is if a current renewal project chooses to reallocate their grant funding. So if one of the projects that's up for renewal this year wants to create a new permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing program through reallocation, they have to use their own dollars to do that. That was done last year by the city of Texarkana. That's a program that both Alice Bracken and Shannon Smith, who are with us, work on through their respective agencies. They changed from transitional housing to rapid rehousing. So it definitely can be done, but we had a little bit of a advantage last year and the year before in that we had that money that agencies could reallocate for new projects. And in addition to that, we had money from projects that were closing for whatever reason. So we had a little extra money that we could have used for reallocation to a new project, or we could use, as we chose to do, we could use it as a buffer against any potential HUD cuts that might come our way. Our COC did choose that latter use, and we had that. Last year was approximately $140,000 as a buffer. This year we don't have that. So if there are HUD cuts, they could come out of our current renewal funding. I'm hoping there's not. I'm knocking on wood that there's not, but if we do have cuts, we won't have that buffer this year. So that has changed. So reallocation is just limited to the funding we have contained within our renewal grants, which, as you can see, is a large amount of money. It's $7.6 million. So that's how we can create new permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing outside of a bonus project, which that's the next big thing on this page. This year we're anticipating that, like last year in the last funding cycle, HUD will make a certain amount of money available for the permanent supportive housing bonus. Now this is a little different than your typical permanent supportive housing, but it is something that is very much needed in the balance of states. So we're really hoping that we get an agency or agencies to take advantage of this, if it is available, which we anticipate it will be. We don't know how much it will be. Last year it was, I want to say around $25 million or something like that. Maybe a little bit more, but there were only 25 projects throughout the country funded. So I want our COC to have one of those projects or two this year. And that brings me to the second major point. I think this is the time for us to act on this. And this is something I talked about in the meeting earlier. You can see that HUD shows priority to those COCs with the highest need. Around the country, I don't think there is a COC with a higher need than our COC. So it's not as easy as us just submitting an application and getting it funded through this initiative, but it's probably easier than it would be if we were with a COC that didn't have that high of need in relation to all the other COCs. On top of that, we have been talking with the folks at HUD and some of the higher-ups at HUD a lot recently and explaining to them why we have such a need and why we are unfairly funded, in my opinion, inadequately funded would be a better way to say it, when compared to other COCs. So we've got their attention in HUD in Washington, and they've already said that they'll prioritize the COCs with the highest need for chronic homelessness. So I really think this is the time to act. So we've done some things with the new project application that will hopefully help get some really good proposals together within our communities and submitted this year. So that's the second major thing. And I'll take a little pause in case anyone's got a question. Okay, I'll move on. And this will be sent out to everyone. You can see there's different parts highlighted. These are things that were suggested that we add either by staff here or folks that have reviewed the document, but they're not things that would change the substance of this form. So the group that met earlier, they decided that these changes that are still left to be done would not change the substance, so therefore the COC governance committee could vote on the approval of this form. Okay. The third major thing is a better description or a better rationale for leverage. So in the past, the way we've described leverage to you has been simply in regard to how our COC application scores because of it. And while it is true that the higher leverage we have, the higher score we will get as a COC, what's also true and just as important is that leverage is something that every project application needs. So leverage is referring to all that cash and in-kind support that you get from your community to operate the program you're applying for. HUD will only give our project applicants so much funding. The rest of that needs to come from the applicant themselves or the community. And HUD wants the majority of the funding and the support to come from the applicant themselves and the community. And in the end, they really want to just be funding housing. So it is important from just a realistic aspect to increase your leverage amount in your community for your project application as much as you can. It will also result in a better score for your project application and our COC as a whole. So we added some language to that to better explain that. Okay, and the fourth thing and last thing that I wanted to point out, and hopefully we'll get some comments after that, I wanted to talk about the timeline, and it is a tentative timeline. These dates will change once we hear anything from HUD. So there's two things. It's a tentative timeline, and it's a quick turnaround. It's assuming a quick turnaround. I am really hoping that a quick turnaround will not be needed. What I have heard lately from some folks that work real closely with HUD is that it will not be a quick turnaround, and the funding notice will not be announced this early. But I think it's important for us as a COC lead and you as COC members to be prepared if it is announced early and if it is a quick turnaround. We can always adjust to having more time to do everything that we need to do, and that's much easier to do than it would be for us to compress our timeline because we thought we would have more time. And so this represents that quick turnaround, and you could almost say it's your worst case scenario, but it's still something that's very doable. We've done it in the past. We always are very cognizant of giving the project applicants a lot of time to fill out their applications. So you can see we try to give folks a month to do that. And throughout that month, we offer technical assistance to those applicants for each part of that application process. So we will do that again this year. We will hold webinars on the different parts of the application. We will hold webinars on using eSnaps. We will provide documentation to users and project applicants. And then we will offer times for you to meet with us one-on-one in 30-minute TA sessions. So we will help you as much as we can to get your projects in good order and submitted on time. And then we will work on the second part of this process, which is the COC application. It's a community profile where we profile the COC and then we report out on our performance over the past year and project out our performance for the next year and 5 years and 10 years down the road. So those are the four major things that really I felt like needed to be pointed out on the RFP. So I am going to see if there are any questions. Okay, we do have one question from Pam Mossberger. And she asked how many organizations in the balance of state are eligible to apply in this grant. So this year, for the renewal application, those projects that are up for their one-year renewal grant, there are about 40 of those. I think maybe a little bit more than 40. So and those will certainly be applying this year. All of those will be. The bonus money allows other projects to be funded and other projects to submit applications for funding. So we could have many more organizations do that. It's likely that HUD will only allow one application per COC to be funded. That's what it turned out to be last year. So we may have a lot of applications put together for the permanent supportive housing bonus, but only one funded. So many can apply. Unfortunately, as always, not all of them will be funded. Hopefully that answers your question. So any other questions about this? So we reviewed the RFP. I reviewed it with the group that I met with before, and I think just about everyone on that webinar were renewal applicants. So these are the people that will be most affected by this RFP and RCOC process. So we put a poll out asking if they approved of this form in draft form with the suggested edits, with the understanding that those suggested edits did not offer any substantive change to the RFP, and the vote was unanimous. 100% voted that we approve it for board vote. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask for the board to vote on that in just a second. There is one more question that came in. Okay, Craig Firo from here in THN. Hey, I planted this question with him. I didn't really, but it almost seems like I did. He asked, can a community do a collaborative application for the reallocation, or can it only be from one organization? So that's a great question, and I'm glad he asked it. Yes, there can be a collaborative. If HUD only funds one program, one project application, which is very likely, it would be wise of us as a COC to join together as several different agencies in one community or several different communities to apply for and put together an application that is a large collaboration where we ask for a large amount of funding to provide a large number of permanent supportive housing units for the chronically homeless. That is certainly eligible, and in fact that is something I'm actually hoping that we can do. I'm trying to get something stirred up with some of our state agencies so that we can do that, and hopefully we can get some of our local agencies to help out with that as well. So that's a great question. Thank you, Craig. Any other questions about the RFP before I ask the governance committee to vote on this? Okay. So let me see the voting members in attendance. So the question is, do we vote to approve the RFP as drafted with the suggested edits or not? So I'm going to go down the list and start with Carol Gresham. And I've unmuted you.
Okay, yes, I vote yes for this.
Okay. And I'll leave you unmuted. Christina?
Yes.
And looks like Sandra Moore. Let me unmute you, Sandra. She beat me to the punch. She typed it in. She typed in yes. And Tracy Sepulvedo. You're unmuted, Tracy. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. And I actually still have a vote until August, so I'll vote yes as well. So we have enough votes that it's approved. We will make the changes that we indicated we will make, and we will put that on our website. I will, oh, I'm sorry. I see Kelly Stallings is also with us. She has been able to join us. So she also voted yes. So we have more than enough votes. Thank you, Kelly. I will put the final version on our website. I'll make sure everyone gets that. But I'll also save this format with the highlighted parts and send that to you as well. Okay. So the next thing to talk about is the COC application for new housing projects. This we went through rather quickly as a group. There weren't many changes from last year, and we can go through it pretty quickly with this group as well, and we can take a vote on it shortly after that. So this, like I said, it hasn't changed much from last year. This is based on the assumption that as last year, as the last competition, HUD will provide some funding for the permanent supportive housing bonus, and it also accounts for any funding that could be created through reallocation. We talked about both of those things earlier in detail, so I don't need to go through those again. But any project that is new, considered new, even if it's using renewal, funding that has been in renewal, has to go through this process. So that does account for agencies like last year, the City of Texarkana, who reallocated their funding for transitional housing to apply for rapid rehousing. As soon as they choose to reallocate it, they become a new project, and they're applying for that money as if it's brand new pot of money, so they have to go through this process. And again, I pointed out to the group that the only money that's available for reallocation would have to come from a current renewal grantee, but we talked about that before. Like I said, there hasn't been many changes since last year. And one of the important things we always need to point out for folks, and I pointed out earlier, but it's good to point it out again, this permanent supportive housing bonus project is 100% for chronically homeless individuals and families. So if a community is thinking about applying for this money because it sounds like it's a good idea and we have a good chance of receiving this funding, they need to back up a little bit and think about, okay, does my community need this project? Does my community have a lot of chronically homeless? Can we actually use this funding if we do receive it? So it's important to back up and think about those things before an application is submitted. Also, it's important for any potential project applicant to consider the restrictions on this funding. And one of the important ones, in addition to only being able to serve the chronically homeless, is the restriction on what you can use the money for. Like I said before, HUD wants the majority of their funding to be used for housing. Well, with the bonus project, they just write it into the grant requirements. They don't prioritize projects that are primarily housing. They just say, this is what you have to do. So 70% has to be used for housing in some form or fashion, whether it be through leasing, rental assistance, or operating cost. And no more than 30% can be used for the supportive services. And we have a lot of case managers out there and folks on the call, and I know what you're thinking. Case management is essential to a client's success in our program, and I totally agree with you. But what HUD is saying with this is we want our project applicants to find that funding, that in-kind support from other sources, and we want to be the provider of housing funding. So they're very, very strict with the bonus money on this particular project. Then one of the other important things to point out, and one of the biggest changes, so actually it is the biggest change, I'll make this a little bigger. In the past, for new projects in the Texas Balance of State, we have required applicants to come up with a large amount of leveraged support. So that means a large amount of cash match funding, in-kind funding, and in-kind support. Add it all together for a high percentage over what their funding request is. So in the past, we've actually gone up to 212% as a requirement for leverage percentage. And what that means is that if a project was to apply for $10, say their funding request is $10, what we were requiring them to do is come up with $21 in leverage support. And you can imagine if you're applying for $1 million project, your leverage support can be very high. Your leverage requirement could be very high if we were applying the same rules that we had applied before. And the reason we did that is because COCs receive bonus points if they are able to have an averaged leverage percentage of 150% across all of their new projects, and that those points were very much needed by the Texas Balanced State in the past. What we're doing now is we're betting that those points aren't as needed because we are scoring higher as a COC on the COC application, and we are one of the COCs with the highest needs for permanent supportive housing. So we're betting on that, and we're betting on our communities to come up with really good permanent supportive housing applications and take advantage of this bonus money. So what we're doing this year is we're just encouraging our applicants to come up with the largest amount of leverage that they can and not make a certain percentage a requirement. Obviously, those that come up with the largest amount of money will receive bonus points and may be prioritized higher than other projects that do not demonstrate they can come up with a large amount of leverage support in their community. So any questions about that? And I said there's a question from Craig actually, what was that percentage again? In the past years, our leverage percentage got up to 212%. Last year we dropped it back down to 150% because that's all we needed to get the bonus from HUD. But this year we've dropped that requirement in order to encourage more project applications to be submitted for this money, because we think the time is right for us to move on this. Any questions about this? Okay, let me go through the rest of this, and if you have questions you can ask, but the rest goes pretty quickly. So the remainder of this form is simply the application in a Word document, or in this case PDF document, laid out the same way or in the same order as the application that a applicant would complete through eSnaps, which is the online reporting and grant submission system that HUD uses. So any applicant that goes through this process will have all of the answers already by the time they get into eSnaps and start entering data. So it's a long form, but it's asking exactly what HUD asked in the eSnap system. There's just one other section I want to point out before we get some more discussion and take a vote. Okay, so this section is in here. If you read the HUD regs, HUD does allow new project applicants to apply for up to 10% in admin funding. As a COC, we voted a few years ago not to allow that, to only allow project applicants to fund or apply for up to 7%. We did this because we do receive bonus points for this, and we don't feel that we can lose these bonus points in addition to any bonus points we might lose for leveraging percentage. So we want to keep this in there for new projects, and everyone else is at 7% or lower within our renewal grant inventory. Okay, that was the last section that was, I think, very important to review. And like with the RFP, the group that we met with earlier, they reviewed this with us, made some comments, and then we took a vote on it. And just like with the RFP, the vote was unanimous in favor to approve to send to the governance committee for the final vote. So if you have any questions before we take a vote, you can ask them now. There has been one question. Carol Gresham with Safety asked, with the 7%, is that included in the 30%, or in addition to the 30%. So what she's talking about is, okay, is that 7% admin part of the 30% for supportive services? If it's like previous project applications, it is not part of that 30%. So that 7% will be 7% of what you request when you combine the funding totals of the 70 and 30%. So I know people are saying that's 107%. Well, that's that's the HUD math for you on that, at least this project application. So the quick answer is no, it's not part of the 30% unless they've changed things from last year. Any other questions about the new project application? Okay, here's another one from Shannon Smith. What if your project doesn't meet their match form application to win the project? Okay, you're asking, what if your project doesn't meet their match from application to when the project is over? I don't know that I understand. Are you asking if you have a matching amount that will be available at a different time than when the project is being operated? If that is what you're asking, you can rephrase your question if you want, but HUD does want projects to identify match that will be available during the project year for which they are applying. Hopefully that is what you meant to ask. Yes, okay. If there are any other questions, type them in. Okay. There were very little changes with this, so I think I feel really confident that the governance committee can vote on this. So I'm going to go through and take votes. So the vote is on whether or not to approve the Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care 2015 application for new housing projects. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Carol Gresham. How do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. Christina Folsom.
Yes.
Okay. Kelly Stallings. And I didn't unmute you. She'll type in her answer. Sandra Moore. Okay, Sandra and Kelly both voted yes. We have Tracy Sepulvedo. Tracy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, so he just votes yes, and then I vote yes as well. So this is approved, and just like with the RFP, I will put the final version on our website, send that to you, and I will send this version to you with the highlighted parts and the notes. And if you get it and you want to look at the notes, you just click on the shading, and you'll see the notes pop up. Okay, finally I can quit talking for a little bit. Well, one more thing. Like I said earlier, we didn't really have time earlier this morning to talk about the COC renewal. Well, that's none of their, it's the COC renewal project evaluation process. We're going to talk about that more next month. The reason I want to take a little bit more time with that is because for our renewal projects, this is pretty serious business every year. How we rank, how we score and rank and ultimately prioritize those projects is very important to those projects because HUD has threatened us with cuts in the past and they likely will again. So we want to really take our time with all of our COC members because everyone is encouraged to participate in this planning, but especially with our renewal project applicants because we want to make sure that we create the fairest, most transparent process that we can for these folks. So we're going to work more on that next month and probably have a couple of meetings around that. Okay, so last month we had our general membership meeting, and one of the things we talked about was our CLC governance. And within that governance, we talked about defining some of our terms. And one of the things that we need to define is what we consider a homeless coalition to be. And it's not what THN considers a homeless coalition to be. It's what our COC members consider a homeless coalition to be. And we're not doing it just because it's a good thing to do. We need to do it so that when we're choosing folks, or when folks are being nominated for our representative planning group, which will be our board, will be the group from which our board is chosen, we need to know what a coalition is so we can say, this is a representative from X coalition. So we're trying to better define some of our terms that are already within our governance, and we need to turn to you for help on that. And I thought that we could get some information from some of our local coalition or network leads and use some of that information going forward to help us with planning before the next month, when we may have a proposal for you on how to define or what are the parameters of a local homeless coalition, or LHC, as you'll start hearing from us more and more. So I asked if a few of our folks could talk, and they graciously accepted this opportunity. And I know that some of them said their mic wasn't working or they weren't here, so I'm going to start with someone who I know is here. So I'm going to get a little out of order, if that's okay with y'all, so I can have a little break for my voice. Hannah, I'm going to try you one more time, and if that doesn't work, then we're going to go to Christina Folsom. First we're going to try Brown County Home Solutions, Hannah Adams, and we'll see if your mic works. So if you're muted on your end, so if you can unmute yourself, I think we might be able to hear you. Okay?
Am I muted?
You are good.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, wonderful.
You might just want to speak
I
up just a little
several
bit before you
different
get going.
options.
Sorry.
I said I've tried several different options, and now I'm on my iPad, so good. You can hear me well?
We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, good. My name is Hannah Adams. I'm the Executive Director at Central Texas Opportunities. That's part of a collaborative of various nonprofits and business owners here in the Brown County area. We've formed a Brown County Home Solutions Coalition to help end homelessness in Brown County. Our mission statement is to assist Brown County homeless individuals and families or persons at risk of homelessness to quickly regain stability and permanent housing, break down agency silos, and to increase local efficiencies and to leverage dollars across participating agencies. We were given an opportunity several years ago of a building for a homeless shelter. Well, that shelter didn't. That shelter didn't happen, but we noticed that we all had a lot of capacities, but we didn't know what each other were doing for homelessness. So this coalition meets once a month and share our stories, our numbers, so we can see what we're doing as a broader group. About 6 months ago, we were donated a facility, and now we're working toward getting that facility up and running. We don't have a director yet, but we do have a position open for a director, but a director won't be paid until funds become available. And crazy enough, we've had about 4 people apply for a non-paid director position. So hopefully when we get a director in place, we'll be able to get that facility up and going. On top of our monthly community meetings, we also have a community meeting with the entire community at large, because a lot of people have different ideas of having a shelter in their county, scared that it may bring in homeless people, not knowing that they're already here. So, we're visiting with community leaders and people in the neighborhood, let them know what we're doing, and to kind of break down those the false ideas they had about the shelter. Last week we did a poverty simulation to heighten awareness about homelessness in Brown County, and our board of directors is a board of about 12 people, and Brown County, to kind of give you an idea, is only 38,000 people. But our tenant-based rental assistance that CTO does, about half of the 50 families we helped with rental assistance half of them were homeless. So, did you want me to cover anything else, Eric?
No, I think that's great. I might ask you a few more questions before you shut your mic off. So I think it was a couple of years ago when I first met your group, right?
Yes, sir.
And so whenever they got together then, they were talking about things like what they should name their coalition. And so they've made it from that point to where they are now, where they have people applying for an unpaid director position to lead their Brown Home Solutions coalition. And so I've been really impressed with what they did. Whenever Hannah emailed me back about agreeing to participate in this, number one, I was very excited because I thought it would be good for everyone to hear from a community her size. Also, I was very excited whenever she started telling me about everything that they've done. And so it's amazing. I think with all of these, it really depends on who is involved and who's leading it. So with each local homeless coalition, a strong leader is important, and Hannah is that. So Hannah, you may have talked about this, and maybe I missed it, but your coalition membership, how is that dictated, or how is that?
As far as the board of directors, in our bylaws, because like you said, we started from the ground floor. We didn't have anything. We had no bylaws, no structure, no 501c3, and so all those things have been put into place. And in our bylaws, we say how many business people, how many social service agencies, because we were getting social service agency heavy, and we didn't have enough other community buy-in. We're going out now to the local churches. We already have several churches that are sponsoring every month. They send us a check to help get this shelter underway. And we've had some good publicity in the last couple of months with the local papers, and now we have a construction company on board on our board of directors that's going to help develop this shelter as it comes along. And then 2 weeks ago, or no, probably about a month ago, we did a strategic planning and did the SWOT analysis, and we found our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and we have divided up those assignments because this board is a working board. We all have full-time jobs, but we also are working on this project at the same time, and so we've broken up action items into administrative, community education and outreach, and fund development, and each of us have assignments that we're supposed to do every month. And it seems sometimes like it's a slow process, but we've done a lot in the last 2 years to help homeless or at-risk homeless people in Brown County.
Yeah, I'll say, I think you've done a lot. And if anyone thinks you're moving slow, look at it from our point of view. You're moving very fast. And I'll be quite honest, when I first visited y'all, when I left that meeting, whenever I was driving back, I thought, I don't know if this group's going to continue to meet, because that happens a lot. I'll go out to a community and I'll meet with folks, and they're real excited, and they start meeting, and then it fizzles out. But it's obvious that you guys have kept it going and taken it even further than I would have even expected. So,
well, thank you.
Great job, and thank you so much for presenting.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Is there any questions from anybody about our coalition, or I'd be glad to answer anything I can.
Okay.
Any questions out there, y'all? Well, I know that I would love to see a lot of the documentation you've been working on and your SWOT analysis, things like that.
Okay.
Wipe that out.
I'd be glad to share. We've also developed a job description for this unpaid person. I can't believe people can work for free. And then we also have listed several other shelters in the area and formed processes for people to come through the shelter. And as we're referring back and forth through our agencies, what each agency does, and if they're needing rental assistance, who do they call? And so a resource guide amongst ourselves to share, so people won't have to be homeless as long, maybe.
Again, amazing. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in. And as we're going through these, we have a few more. If you have questions for Hannah and you didn't ask it at the time we were talking to her, you can say, hey, this question is for Hannah, and we'll just ask it.
And I would like to offer, if any of the coalitions are needing training as far as our poverty simulation, would be glad to come and do a poverty simulation, especially for other community members that really don't get what it's like to be low income and homeless. It's a 4-hour workshop that would have continuing education hours with it. Very powerful 4-hour workshop that last week when I did it, there was a doctor in the that was in the simulation, and she was extremely impressed and got emotional. At least 3 people cried, and it was a good cry.
Changing a lot of minds there. So again, thank you. Actually, there was a question.
So.
Oh no, I'm sorry, there wasn't a question. Someone's just got to sign off. So, okay, so I did get a little out of order, but I noticed that Kelly Stallings, it looks like her mic's on, so I'm going to go ahead and see if she can talk. All right, Kelly, can you
hear me?
We can hear you. So.
Okay, you can hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
You can? Great. Well, our coalition has been around a long time, but is not as far along as we just heard from the last coalition from Christina. We started meeting probably in 2004, and it was different shelters in the area. So it mainly started with people concerned about homeless youth or people that were homeless due to domestic violence or sexual assault, and then starting to pull in other community members who were providing homeless prevention services. And from that grew the idea that we needed something more long-term. So we had started working as a group in the last couple years to develop some transitional housing, and we have the land for that and are working then on starting the building within the next few months. And then we also started within the last year and a half a Family Promise agency. So they're providing homeless shelter for families in church sites, and they change church sites every week if you're not familiar with that model. We still, just like she talked about earlier, we are real concerned that the community is not supportive of any kind of homeless shelter for people that are not attached to a family. And again, the concern that they're coming here, not that they're already in our community. So our goal recently has been to more pull everybody together better and more formalize our coalition. So we are working, we have come up with a mission statement and a tagline, and then are working on developing committees to address certain issues that relate to either homeless prevention or homeless services. And one of those committees is specifically responsible for getting the word out more, and how we're going to market our mission and our message so that we can help the community better understand what homelessness is in our community and how we are addressing that already and what the existing needs still are. We have conducted a homeless count for probably 6 to 8 years, doing that every year, and are using that information to be able to educate the community as well. And then we're also looking at how we can send more of a message on providing more affordable housing in our community, because that's part of the issue is the community doesn't have a whole lot. And that's something that needs to change in order to really make an impact. Any questions about that?
No, I don't. And one thing I would like to say is you said you haven't done that much, and maybe you're thinking in relation to what they're doing, but I feel like you have done a lot. You have a group that regularly meets, and you plan, you strategically plan in homelessness. And this is a group, everyone who has come together and applied for funding to develop projects to do that. So,
yeah. I'm probably going to need to mute myself.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Kelly. If anyone has questions, you can type those in for either Kelly or Hannah. So I'm quickly going to go over Jennifer Lawrence, short presentation, because she had to go home. She had a migraine, and she's extremely busy. So the Texarkana Homeless Coalition really began, they've been meeting on and off for years, but I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago they really kind of got serious with it and started developing plans into homelessness and reporting out on those plans. And they're another area who they've done a lot in the past few years, and they have grown in terms of their planning and their service and shelter coordination. She said that they do have a small annual fee for members. It's $50. And they try to include everyone's voice, not only direct service providers, but also medical representatives, business owners, city government representatives, and the housing authority. And for them, that's really important, especially to get those business leaders, because a lot of their services are provided downtown and very near to an area that's being redeveloped by the community. So it's important that they involve their business leaders in planning and decision making. And she says they're committed to each other and the cause they're working toward, and they are. We can see that here at THN and see the work that they're doing, and it has resulted in the funding of new projects and the development of new projects. And she says we aren't perfect, and we have or are having growing pains, but they're trying really hard as a group to serve the clients in their community. And they meet monthly, and they participate in all the regular counts and surveys, and they involve their housing authority in a lot of the planning as well. And that's where they're a little different than some of the other communities. One of the other ways they're really different is that they border Arkansas and Louisiana, and they have to work closely with Johnson County, Arkansas, and the Texarkana, Arkansas side in their planning. So they have some challenges there, but they're facing those and meeting those challenges and benefiting from their proximity to Texarkana, Arkansas, and Shreveport, Louisiana. So they're doing a lot of good work there, and we have a couple of folks from there if they want to say anything. I'm not going to point out who they are, but if they want to say something, they can type in and say that they do. You know what, and I'll let them do that at the end of our presentations if they want to. So I'm just going to let Christina finish us up here, talking about the East Texas Human Needs Network. And Christina, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon. The East Texas Human Needs Network started 2.5 years ago, but prior to that, let me give you a little history. We had the Smith County Coalition for the Homeless. I had been a part of it for about 8 years, and it did all of the things that most coalitions do, the point-in-time homeless survey, one night without a home, advocacy campaigns, and getting together each month and learning about each other's services, networking, and thus doing referrals. But no one in our community had a HMIS system in place, which has been a tremendous turnaround for us, even though now we have 3. It's still a small community, relatively small, 100,000 people in our community. But I was the executive director of a nonprofit. I left 2.5 years ago because of the realization that to address not just homelessness, but to address poverty, we needed to address all of the barriers, and housing is certainly not the one barrier. In fact, I think homelessness is probably the worst side effect of poverty. But that if we can address education and employment and health care and transportation and child care and all of these other barriers that people face, that ultimately you can help someone become self-sufficient in a much shorter period of time. So when we were a homeless coalition and I invited education and healthcare and other entities to the table, they didn't find their place. They didn't, everybody's so busy, right? So they didn't come to the table until we started the East Texas Human Needs Network. So now we have more than 60 organizations and even more than that, probably 20-some individuals, corporations. All of our universities and medical institutions are all members. We've done research. We now do research together on what the needs are in the community by interviewing individuals who are under-resourced, not by interviewing executive directors of nonprofits, because I learned the hard way, having been one, that what I thought the biggest problem wasn't necessarily the biggest problem in the community. It was just from my lens and my perspective. So we meet monthly. We have action items that we've established based on the research and the data, and we have committees in each of these fields: education, healthcare, housing, transportation, and we've been working towards those things. We're also adding in our community, just like Hannah is doing in Brown County, poverty simulations. We are also doing an implementation of collective impact through Bridges Out of Poverty, Phil Duvall's work, and the Getting Ahead Network, and those things are being implemented this year. So our Homeless Coalition is really the housing committee within the East Texas Human Needs Network. And what they've been able to do in the last couple of years is write collaborative grants for ESG, working together on mapping the process, and in the process, thanks to THN, with technical assistance of implementing coordinated access and assessment. So that's where we are. It was a long time coming, and just like others have said, we still have a long way to go, but we're making progress.
Thank you very much. And so I'm going to take a little time if you have questions before I go into the next thing. So if anyone has any questions for any of the people that have presented, please type those in while you're deciding whether or not you're going to do that. Let me again go over the reason for this. The reason I asked these folks to talk about their communities is so we can begin to get a better idea of what our parameters are for a homeless coalition. So you can see each one of the communities, they're different. They have different challenges. They're different sizes. They all take different approaches. And I'm not asking our COC members to define the perfect coalition and then for us to use that. I want us to find those parameters for what a local homeless coalition or LHC should be, how we will define those within our COC. And these folks gave us a lot of options, and they're presented as not for you to compare your coalition to, or for you to compete with as a coalition. It's for you to see the other options and how people can make it work in different communities of different sizes, and that is what the balance of state is made of. So again, thank you to Kelly, Hannah, Jennifer and Christina for agreeing to participate on this. And I have some polls here. Actually, there is a question that came in. I'm sorry. I had two questions that came in. Sorry I didn't see those earlier, y'all. Pam Mossberger from Faith Mission in Brenham asked if there's a organization in Brown County, this was for Hannah, that is COC funded. I can tell you that only one of these areas has a COC funded program right now, COC HUD funded program, and that one is in Texarkana. Right now, Comal County, Brown County, and Smith County, where the East Texas Human Needs Network, they are without a HUD Continuum of Care funded program. The second question that came in, Craig actually asked, how do you get such a great faith-based backing over the years for your coalitions and keep the group from seeing that as a dividing point? Oh, I'm sorry, and that's for Kelly Stallings. Let me unmute her. Kelly, if you can answer that. If you're still on the phone, I'll mute you back. Okay, you can unmute yourself if you want to answer that. So, how do you get such a great faith-based backing and keep those folks together with your service providers? I believe that's the question. Well, she may not be able to answer, Craig. But I think she probably does it through tenacity, just like all of our other good LHC leaders. So, okay, so I want to take just a few more minutes of your time to do these quick opinion polls. I'm thinking about following this up next month with some surveys to get some opinions from you that are a little longer, but these opinion polls, I'm going to launch them and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to complete them, and then I'm going to put them down. So there's 4 of them. I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. This is a check all that apply, and we're asking how frequently should a homeless coalition meet. So you choose all of the options that you feel apply. So it should be up right now. You have 20 more seconds. We're going to do these fast. And yes, you can choose more than one option.
Oh.
Okay, 2 seconds. All right, I'm going to close that poll. I will send the results to you later, but I can tell you that the majority said monthly and quarterly. Okay, here is your second. What should be accomplished at your homeless coalition meetings? And this is, I think, a check all that apply. I hope it is. If it's not, then check the one that best applies. Okay, you have a little over 10 seconds. I'm sorry, now it's just a little bit less than 10 seconds. Wow, good participation, thank you. 2, 1, okay, I'm going to close that one. Again, I'll send the results. The answers for this were all over the board, actually. So it looks like the first 3 options are probably the most popular. Okay, here's the third of 4, and this one asks, how do members of your local homeless coalition, or how do members join a local homeless coalition? Okay, the timer has started. Five seconds. 2, 1, and then the final poll. Our officers chosen for the local homeless coalition. Okay, this is the final one, so go ahead and vote. And so these are just some of the questions we're hoping to get your answers on, and we'll ask others if you can participate. We'll try to keep the surveys short that we're going to send out in respect of your time, but getting your opinions is very valuable. Okay, 4 seconds. 2, 1, okay, that's closed. It looks like the vast majority of you vote on your officers through an at-large vote. All right, so thank you for taking the time to do those. I wanted those to be quick, and they went quick. So I'm going to wrap this up with next steps, preparing for the May COC board meeting. We will talk about and maybe have ready for the COC board to vote on a definition or a description of what a LHC is, Local Homeless Coalition. We should also have the renewal evaluation process form completed and ready for vote as well. If the fiscal year 2015 NOFA has been released, or at least if the rules of that NOFA have been released, we will go over those. And then if we have anything else to report on, we'll go over that as well. And I don't think I say this enough. Everyone who's joining this call and everyone in your community, you are our COC members. You are the Texas Balance of State COC membership. And if you have ideas of what we should talk about, please share them, because ultimately this is your COC, and that's what we should talk about whenever we have our board meetings. So please feel free to offer your suggestions to TH and staff on our agenda items. So that is all I have. I will stick around for some questions if you have any questions, but thank you all for participating, and special thanks to those who presented on their local homeless coalitions, and to Jennifer Paulson for joining us earlier. So I'm going to stick around for any questions. If you don't have any and you need to get back to working with your clients or on your programs, please do that now, and I will talk to you sometime next month, if not before. Thank you.